Hello and welcome, Exiles. Phrecia is back. If you didn't get to play this last year when it happened, I would strongly suggest you're gonna want to try it. This, for me, is the best league PoE's ever had. Technically, it's not an official league. I don't care. It's the most fun I've ever had playing PoE, and I think if you haven't tried it out, you really should consider it. The biggest downside of this league was trading idols. Ask anyone who played it. It was just a frustrating experience because there was a bunch of price fixers and a bunch of people who didn't want to jump out of their maps to trade. So you'd have to message a bunch of people, and async trade completely solves that problem. The one downside that I would have to say about this league is solved going into it. And they're only giving us 3 weeks. I got to be honest, that's the biggest bummer out of this whole deal is it's only going to be a 3-week Phrecia, but I'm going to play the crap out of it because I think it's just so dang fun. And I'll talk about why that is. So first of all, the biggest thing is it can't be gone without saying, looking at Phrecia, what's the biggest thing that changes? Your base class, your ascendancies, the core way you build your characters is completely thrown on its head because they change out all the ascendancies with new ones. There's a lot of fun ones. Big highlights for me were Scavenger, the Oshabi ascendancy, the Ancestral Commander was absolutely insane, the Val Architect. There was a lot of crazy things you could build around that were a lot of fun. They're saying they're going to balance them. We'll see. Maybe some ascendancies get some new stuff. Maybe the overpower ones get toned down a bit. We'll see what that means. We don't know. But that's selling point number one, is you're not going to be building necessarily the same way you would before. There's a lot of archetypes and builds you will make again. For example, let's say Penance Brand of Dissipation is strong in the current game. Guess what? It's still going to be strong in Phrecia, but the way you build your character will be different, if that makes sense. The good skills are still the good skills. The bad skills are still the bad skills. That doesn't necessarily change. There are some skills that get heavily enabled by these ascendancies. Like, for example, Herald of Agony with Scourge and the +3 gem. Herald of Agony gets super elevated beyond its normal breadth of power. But the example I'm trying to make here is, for the most part, the best skills will still be the best skills in the game, with a few exceptions, but the way you build your character will be a lot different due to what these ascendancies allow you to do. So that's the big selling point number one, and we're really just waiting on them to give us the patch notes where they say, hey, this is what we're changing. And when they do that, I'll probably drop a video based on my opinion of the highlights of things I think are cool that you could build around. I already have some ideas floating around my head that I didn't get to try, or things I figured out later on after Phrecia was over, that now if we're getting these ascendancies back, I can maybe go back and try to build some nice mechanics that could be abused and made some pretty good characters with. Now let's talk about the idol system. The idol system it was very controversial because of trading. You had to go and trade with people to then recombinate. And I want to highlight very important things that have changed since then. Number one is async trade. You no longer have to deal with messaging 50 people to get one specific affix you're looking for. The price is the price. You know, when you click the link, it's going to teleport you to that guy's hideout and you're going to get to buy it. There's no more workaround of trying to spam through listings to find the one guy who's actually a real seller. That's the biggest part in itself. But another point I want to make is specifically having to do with recombination getting buffed for this mechanic. And the reason I say buff, you know, they made the recombination change, is because they added the mechanic that allows you to choose see if I can find another pair of gloves here real quick just to use as an example. They allow you to do the PoE2 recombination, which chooses a specific affix to combine. Like, for example, if you did this mod and this mod, it would tell you this is the chance that you get both of these mods together. Specifically, this is a buff because a lot of times you're targeting one specific affix, but idols had no method of like crafting or changing things around to leverage odds in your favor. And this is a specific way that might be more beneficial for you to put 2 specific affixes of idols together to then build your way up to a 4 mod idol. They had up to 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes per idol, and generally they dropped however they were with a random roll range of stats. And we're just trying to build from one specific stat where you're trying to slam it together with another one and just RNG hope that you get the right combination to occur. This recombination method may actually prove to be beneficial in a much more powerful extent when you get to the league, because quite frankly, when you're throwing together a 4 mod together and there's only 2 affixes you care about, the chances you get those 2 affixes isolated the way you want them is very, very low, whereas the choose your specific mod recombination may be just downright better odds. It also might give us a scenario where we can maybe work backwards to figure out a bit on what the weightings are on some of these affixes, which would be kind of funny to think about. Now, the next thing I want to point out with this is how the system works. Is the idle system can have a 2x2, 1x1, 1x2s, and 3x1s, both vertical and horizontal. And the 3x1s, they have a specific affix pool. The 1x1s have their own affix pool. The 2x2s have an affix pool. Basically, what you can expect is 1x1 are more basic mods, like chance for this type of mechanic to occur in the zone, whereas 2x2s have things like rarer beasts. I'm trying to think of like other Atlas nodes that are more like special or more unique. That would be on the 2x2 mods. 1x3 mods have some pretty powerful mods. Just depending on what mechanic you're doing, you might want more than one idol than another. For example, the 1x3 idols from the system, they could have a 12% chance for crop to not wilt. So what you could end up doing is you could have up to like 96% chance for a crop to not wilt, which was actually very powerful in Harvest. Just to showcase an example of this, I went and found my old VOD where I had map mods open. You'll see here, I had 94% chance to not wilt. Harvest monsters are duplicated. I had all these affixes, and this, I believe I was running with no Awakening Scarab. Like for right now, if you wanted to run Harvest, you'd have to use an Awakening Scarab. It's a very expensive, rare Scarab. It's completely your lifeline to getting good juice when using the crop rotation. And this would give you a way where you didn't need that. And on average, just to showcase an example of what kind of loot we could expect, when I ended this map, I ended with about 36,000 juice. And keep in mind, this is an alked red map. This is not a T17. This does not have map mods like T17s or that amount of scaling in terms of this is just a red map. Now you'll notice the mods have some pretty insane numbers on them. And the reason is they also had map mod effect on the idols and stuff like that. So we'll have to see how they end up balancing the system. You can look at a list of mods on PUE Wiki, or you can look at PUDB. Point is, it's a customizable, I can double down on whatever affix or whatever mechanic I want to. For example, when you're in PUE right now, when you're doing the Atlas system, and you said, oh, I want to do Harbinger. You click Harbinger and you'll notice there's only 3 Harbinger wheels on the entire tree. The idle system basically allows you to double down and say, well, I would rather have 10 wheels that are all focused on Harvest, are all focused on Harbinger, giving power to that. It lets you really min-max into the specific mechanics you care about. I personally had fun trying out different min-max strategies throughout the league, and I gotta be honest, it also makes for a very juiced economy in terms of, like, let's say for example you want to do some big time crafts and Life Force is your limiting factor. Life Force is a hell of a lot cheaper because of how juiced these maps are, but even if you're running those juiced maps with Harvest, you are still making a decent amount of currency, because although Life Force is cheaper, you're just doing so much more of it with so much less cost. You're still making very good currency per hour, and that's the case with pretty much every mechanic. If you wanted to min-max into it, it did make a good amount of currency per hour from what you could sell and then trade for other things. And it's you know how people refer to some leagues as this is a poor league where we're just going to be broke constantly. Phrecia is, everybody is kind of rich to some extent in terms of a lot of supplies in the market, a lot of things going in and out. You're going to be able to craft and make some pretty cool items because the materials will be very, very able to be farmed in droves. Now, they are referencing that they're going to be balancing the idle system. Maybe they're going to be nerfing certain things. Maybe they're going to be adding some certain things that'll be stronger than before. We're going to see what that means. We don't really know. But all in all, the whole thing where you can double down on a specific mechanic that you like, for me, I thought was a very fun breath of fresh air. And I got to be honest, I felt bad for a lot of people that never got to try idols and the alternate Phrecia ascendancies because it was just an incredibly different experience from base PoE mapping Atlas system and the base ascendancies in terms of what you can build, what you can make with it. So all in all, I'm really freaking stoked for this. It came right in the middle of me doing a mana competition with Connor. Right now, we have been working on farming out specific gear items. I just was saving for 5 days to afford a Mage Blood, and now it sounds like our mana competition is gonna get, we're gonna get 20 less days to try to like drum up our gear and put that together. So it's gonna be a race, become more of a sprint than a marathon in terms of this race. So I'm gonna try to finish up this mana character in the next 10 days here, and then do some theory crafting videos on Phrecia and when we get the changes to what they're doing with the ascendancies, because they are saying that, for example, where is it? Do note there have been some balance changes that will be vary from this and will be available in the patch notes. So they're basically saying, hey, we're going to change some of the Phrecia ascendancies. The main examples I think of when I look at Phrecia is things like Polytheist were probably largely pretty underpowered compared to something like, let's say, the Ancestral Commander. There were certain ascendancies that stuck out as very strong powerhouses right out the gate, where others were a bit more awkward and weak to begin with. So we'll see. Maybe they buff some of the weaker ones, nerf some of the more powerful ones. Who knows where it's going to go? All in all, I'm really, really freaking pumped to play the Legacy of Phrecia event. And yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of a rundown of what the event is. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care, peace out, and I'll see you guys at the League Star for Legacy of Phrecia.